Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our California Community Schools Partnership Program Coherence and Sustainability webinar. My name is Erica Torres, Deputy Superintendent of Public Instruction at the California Department of Education. On behalf of our State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tony Thurmond, thank you so much for joining us today. Next slide, please. So before we get started, I want to make sure everyone knows how to access translation services through Wordly. So please click on the link, and once you are in, you're going to select your preferred language for translation. And please keep the Wordly tab open during the webinar so that you can listen to or read the translations. Next slide, please. Today, I am so honored to introduce our presenters today, and they are truly amazing. We have Dr. Navdeep Pural, Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services at the Sacramento County Office of Education. We also have Janet Abdus Sayed and Carmina Barrales, Education Programs Consultants with the California Department of Education. Aaliyah Van Dyke, Director of Community Schools and Mental Health with the Wheatland Union High School District. And we are so grateful for their commitment and for sharing their expertise with us. Thank you so much for joining us today. Next slide, please. So our State Superintendent of Public Instruction has prioritized transforming California schools. And this vision really does frame the work that we are engaging in today. So I'm so glad that you've joined us. Transformation, as we know at its core, means looking at our education systems differently. This is through a lens of equity, coherence, and sustainability. It also means that we're building systems that are aligned and really responsive to the needs of the whole child. And this vision, as we know, is rooted in a commitment to ensuring that every student has access to high quality learning opportunities and the support needed to succeed in school and in life. It also emphasizes coherence where initiatives are aligned and connected. And it also calls for sustainability so that the progress that we make today is carried forward well into the future. And that's why we're here today. We're going to explore how we can align our work and sustain this transformation for generations to come. Next slide, please. So it is now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Navdeep Pural, Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services at the Sacramento County Office of Education, who will guide us into the next part of today's discussion. Welcome, Dr. Pural.
Thank you, Dr. Torres. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Hope you're all doing well. I'm so excited to present to you all and co-facilitate this webinar with our amazing California Department of Education team, who is partnering with our State Transformational Assistance Center. Our team is listed here with the Sacramento County Office of Education leading the S-TAC and partnering with the National Education Association, UCLA Center for Community Schooling, and Californians for Justice. Next slide, please. And so for our outcomes for today, really, we have been intentional about thinking about what Dr. Torres mentioned around coherence and supporting students and communities. So today we're going to explore the alignment between McKinney-Vento Homeless Education goals and the community school strategy. We're going to identify and discuss opportunities for high impact collaboration and effective coordination to promote long-term sustainability of community schools and the strategies and supports for our students. Also, we're going to learn from a district. So Aaliyah Van Dyke from Wheatland is going to share how they are implementing the community school strategy and supporting At Promise Youth. And of course, we're going to provide an opportunity for participants to network and engage in peer discussion, ask questions, share insights, and we'll have some discussion questions for you all as well. Next slide, please. So really, all of you have most likely seen this, our California Community Schools Framework, but I just wanted to stop and connect for a bit. So We know we have students in our school systems that are identified as foster youth students and also unhoused students. And so we know that the California Community Schools Partnership Program itself, one of the eligibility requirements, the qualifying entity needed to actually to become a grantee needed to be one of the following, right? And so there was some criteria around the percentage of unduplicated pupil percentage. And the last part of that qualifying entity said the local education agency or the consortium has a higher than state average rates of child homelessness, foster youth, or justice involved youth. And so just really wanting to center us in just naming and identifying that we are serving students who have needs that the community school strategy can really support. So when we look at this framework and we look at these pillars, conditions of learning, cornerstone commitments, and proven practices, I just wanted to highlight a few. So if we're looking at the integrated student supports, we're really looking at supports, to help students succeed by meeting their academic, physical, social, emotional, and mental health needs. Our statute actually defines this as including the coordination of trauma-informed health, mental health, and social services. Effectively supporting students also requires that students be well known so that they can be well served, right? And we know that our community school strategy really emphasizes the importance of getting to know our students through, connecting with youth and community partners, conducting an asset mapping and gap analysis so that we're providing integrated student supports that are responsive and sometimes preventative to engage students fully in their learning in our classrooms. And second, I wanted to highlight a cornerstone commitment that really names that we're looking at an assets-driven and strengths-based practice, right? So this lens towards sustaining wellness and ensuring healing-centered physical, emotional, and mental health supports are integrated into the school community in ways that are accessible, destigmatizing, and culturally fluent. So really grounding us as we're thinking about students who are foster youth, students who are experiencing homelessness, and how this community schools framework provides multiple opportunities and ways in which we can support, these students that we're going to be talking about today, but also all students. We know that if we provide services and supports to those students who have the highest needs, all students are going to thrive as well. Next slide, please. So as we always talk about this framework, we know that the framework identifies what we need to do, right? And some of the ways to do those pieces around implementing community schools. And our S-TAC has developed these community schools capacity building strategies, which many of you have probably seen these 5. And these are the operational how. So how are we going to really implement community schools? How are we going to ensure that we're cohering programs, services, and supports to meet the needs of our students and to ensure that they are thriving within our classrooms in our schools? And so, with that framing, I am so excited to hand it off to Janet, who will be starting us off with the presentation from the California Department of Education. Janet.
Thank you. So thank you, Dr. Torres and Dr. Purewal and the S-TAC team for having us today and allowing us to share more about the programs our office administers. My name is Janet Abdul Sayed, and I am an education programs consultant with the California Department of Education Homeless Education Program. And I'm also joined by my colleague, Carmina. Carmina, do you want to introduce yourself really quick?
Yes, so like as Janet said, the both of us and one other colleague are education programs consultants in the homeless education program under the Integrated Student Support and Programs Office. Thank you for having us.
So we are the experts in the homeless education program. However, today we'll be presenting a high-level overview on the programs our office supports, which is the Integrated Student Support and Programs Office. Then we'll discuss the homeless education program and its alignment to community schools in greater depth. Next slide, please. So these are the programs our office supports at the state level. Our office administers AB 2083 System of Care, the Foster Youth Services Coordinating Program, also known as the FYSEP, the American Indian Education Program, and the Homeless Education Program. Next slide. So let's go ahead and start out with AB 2083. Next slide, please. Some of you might be familiar with this initiative. It was passed in 2018, and it requires each county in the state of California to develop and implement an MOU that outlines the roles and responsibilities of the various local entities that serve children and youth in foster care who have experienced severe trauma. So the development of the MOU at the local level is key to this legislation. But additional deliverables, including MOU guidance, the state interagency resolution team for technical assistance, a gaps analysis, and the development of a multi-year plan for increasing capacity have all been created to support this mission. Next slide, please. So these are the departments that are involved at both the state and local levels in the system of care. So at the state level, we have the California Health and Human Services Agency, Department of Social Services, Department of Developmental Services, the Department of Healthcare Services, Department of Education, tribal governments, and the Department of Rehabilitation. However, DOR is not a required partner. In addition, at the local level, these are the partners that are included in the MOU process, and they are county child welfare, juvenile probation, behavioral mental health, and offices of education. In addition, regional centers, tribal governments, and Department of Rehab regional offices are involved, although they are not a required partner. Next slide. So this is a graphic that illustrates how many agencies across various departments are involved in the implementation of MOUs. So the success and implementation of these MOUs is heavily dependent on a variety of partnerships, as you can see. Next slide. So let's go ahead and go over the FYSEP, the Foster Youth Services Coordinating Program. Next slide. The FYSEP was established in 2016 with the goal of providing education and support services to foster youth. And this program is administered by county offices of education with several partnerships at the local level. Next slide. So these are just some of the many functions of the FYSEP. So they build collaborative relationships among schools, child welfare, probation, and other partners. They develop agreements to share data and records in a timely manner. They coordinate transportation for foster youth to ensure school stability, and they support transitions to college, career, and independent living. Next slide. And one more slide. We have a lot of transition slides. So finally, we'll go into the American Indian Education Program. And this is a competitive grant that serves approximately 2,300 American Indian students and their families with the intent to provide supplemental educational services to American Indian students through community-based programs that address the unique challenges and needs of American Indian students in California. Next slide. So tribal consultation is required for districts receiving over $40,000 for Title VI or have 50% American Indian student enrollment. So information regarding tribal consultation, including a link of LEAs required to conduct tribal consultation and a toolkit, can be found on the link on that slide. And next slide. And I will pass it over to Carmina.
Yeah, so I think hopefully all of our different programs within our office show at the many levels, the relationships and the different students that we serve and the unduplicated count students that your community schools work also touches. And so obviously we're more experts regarding McKinney-Vento and homeless education. So we'll dig deeper into that. McKinney-Vento Act is the federal law that outlines the requirements of homeless education. And at a very high level, it is the federal language, and it is mirrored and codified in California Education Code as well, of how to ensure equal access to an appropriate public education, from preschool education to older children and youth, including unaccompanied. And in the next slide. It's always really important to make sure that we have the definition. Any resource and any of our presentations do focus on the definition because it differs than your typical like HUD definition. So housing and urban development. We like to say in our program that we know we're talking about actual students and families. So a literal roof over their head is not sufficient. We're talking about students who are trying to complete assignments, who are working to graduate, who are helping support families, all of the things that you all are working and doing and see through your community school grants. So when we talk about the definition, it's regarding fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. So where a student lays their head at night. Is that residence permanent, meaning that it's not going to change every night or every couple of weeks? That it's regular, so it's normal, standard, and consistent, and adequate. Going back to even in the community schools language around their physical and psychological needs. So fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. In the next slide. The definition in the McKinney-Vento Act actually includes examples of the types of homelessness that our families and students experience to help those serving these families better understand the definition. I won't read them to you, but everything that has the definition in our work does include these examples. The next slide. Some of these additional examples are also listed in the McKinney-Vento Act and are mirrored in the California Education Code and all of our different resources as well. I do want to make sure to share in that second bullet and clarify that students who are identified as migrant children or migrant students are not automatically homeless eligible. It's that they are both migrant and meet the definition of homeless, the lacking fixed, regular, and adequate, as well as our unaccompanied youth. In the next slide, there is actually a specific definition for our unaccompanied homeless youth. So youth who are not in the physical custody of a parent or guardian meet this definition. And they are able to enroll in school without the parent or guardian paperwork or signing of different things. And a lot of our liaisons, I'm sure Aaliyah has that experience, at their district level on how to support students who are seeking their academic success and access to school. And we make sure that that doesn't become a barrier. So in our next slide, we'll jump right into what the why of collaboration. You'll notice already in the definition and some of the things that we've shared about who these students are and who the families are that we serve and how to identify them, it already naturally connects to community schools. And a lot of the resources and guarantees to access, the removal of barriers. And we know that together, these two types of supports for families make for better and more equitable outcomes for our students. In the next slide. We thought it'd be important to share some shared interests, shared areas of our work. So family and student engagement is a big priority. Resource development, we'll go a little bit into that. Capacity and sustainability. Professional development is also a very big one. I do want to note and highlight that these slides are in support from our S-TACs, our Homeless Education Technical Assistance Centers. And if we get into the next slide, we do have a resource to spotlight. Our Homeless Education Technical Assistance Centers, or S-TACs, came up with a resource that will align side by side the pillars for community schools, as well as some of the requirements in McKinney-Vento of both state agencies, the SEA, and districts and county offices. If you go to the next slide. I want to make sure to pause for a second and share that if you notice in the resource, like I said just a second ago, it talks about LEAs and SEAs. So districts, county offices, and even us at the state, you'll notice it doesn't go deep into the liaison. That's intentional because this, just like we share in community schools work, that this isn't the responsibility of one person in one role as the homeless liaison. This is a shared responsibility for families, and it shouldn't be led by one person. So it's about holding each other accountable at the district, state, and county office level. So you'll see on the left side, the federal and California education code that talks about some of the responsibilities under McKinney-Vento, and things like removal of barriers and training is a really big one. And then on the right, you'll see the pillar under community schools and where it aligns. So there is a requirement, districts are required to report to the California Department of Education that there is training that is happening. In the next slide, we go into immediate enrollment. There's a federal requirement and state ed code requirement to ensure immediate enrollment of students. That because of lack of any kind of paperwork or signatures, that there is ensured immediate enrollment to serve these students. And there is actually a definition in the law of what enrollment means. And that includes referring to different after-school programs, expanded learning opportunities, tutoring, and that is well connected to the second pillar in community schools. So in the next couple of slides, we go into pillar 3, family and community engagement. There is a requirement for parent involvement and early learning and care. And in that last slide is the collaborative and leadership and practices. So that shared responsibility, Dr. Purwal was talking about trauma informed training and support, the requirement under Title I Part A, special education, all of those different referrals and supports, and making sure that those happen quickly for students to continue their education. And the next slide, I'm sure it's the one that you're all super interested in, funding and sustainability. As our webinar started, we talked a lot about this, and we wanted to make sure that you understood there's 2 different funding streams for homeless education. One is the Education for Homeless Children and Youth grant. It's a federal grant received by by California. And there's also the Title I Part A reservation for homeless. So specifically, if a district or county is receiving Title I Part A, there is a federal requirement to make a reservation specifically just for students who are experiencing homelessness. And so it aligns directly with some of this community schools program priorities and site plans. Some of the other strategies are leveraging some of the community-based partners or match and in-kind. We all know it takes a village to help support all of our families and students. Building and sustainability into MOUs, and any philanthropic micro grants for more flexibility. In our next slide, we do have a slide. We have a one-pager. Well, I say it's a one-pager. If you print it front and back, it's one page. Resource that's Title I Part 8 goes deeper into what that requirement is. It's pretty handy whenever our liaisons have conversations at the district level with fiscal or leadership about what this requirement means. And our office talks a lot about them. So that's what that link is there, regarding also some of the allowable expenditures. On our next slide, we have a listserv. That listserv is open to anyone even beyond the homeless education liaisons. And we have our webpage. If you are wondering, especially after you hear from Aaliyah, who is my liaison? Where's my Aaliyah in my area? And how do I make sure to connect her to our homeless liaison and vice versa? We do have a listing of homeless liaisons on both at the county and district level. And then our last, next two slides are resources. I know I went pretty fast, but I want to make sure that Aaliyah has a lot of time to share all the wonderful things and how this is actually implemented. But all of the resources that we talk about and the resources that I shared on the screen are here on this first slide, specifically all of our S-TAC resources that I shared. And then our second slide has links to our program, not just homeless, but foster and American Indian as well. Our last slide for CDE has our contact information. You can always reach out to any of us. We have some general email boxes for both foster and homeless and our American Indian Education Program consultant.
Thank you so much, CDE team. Before we hand it to Aaliyah, are there any questions? I know there's a question in the chat. Can you elaborate on the Title I reservation for students who are experiencing homelessness, please?
Yeah, so as I shared, for districts and counties who receive Title I Part A, it's that larger apportionment that's specifically for Title I. Within that Title I Part A amount, a district and a county is required to make a reservation that is specifically for serving students who are experiencing homelessness. And it goes beyond serving the students. It can also be used for positions. So some of our districts who are have low identification, who don't have as much support for implementation, Title I Part A can also support the position of the homeless liaison. So that one pager that we linked on our slide has an overview of the requirement and then some allowable uses as well in that list.
Thank you, Carmina. And we are recognizing that some of the links, because these are screenshots of the slides, may not be showing up. So we will, in our
Yeah.
follow-up email, we'll be making sure that this slide deck is available to you with all of the links working, and that follow-up email will come tomorrow. Are there any other questions for Janet or Carmina before we hand it over to Aaliyah?
A real expert.
It
Another
says, is
question.
there any amount max that needs to be set aside for our homeless and foster youth?
Great question. And I know we get that all the time. Just a little quick caveat. This is part of the review that we do when we do FPM's federal program monitoring. So we also should share, and actually, Dr. Pirol will follow up when you send out the email with these slides. We do have a Title I Part A or Title I webinar coming up specifically for homeless. We have presented in the past to Title I directors through the state and federal program directors meetings. And I promise you, your homeless liaison will know exactly how to determine that amount and what's appropriate. And so there is no like formula or anything, just for a quick answer, but you should definitely be working with your homeless liaison to make that determination. And we are more than happy to help with that determination amount. That's part of our TA. And like I said, we'll share our Title I Part A webinar that's coming up as well for those who are interested.
Great. We will definitely be sure to add that. Thank you. All right. And will that Title I webinar have the flyer have a link to register in that?
Yeah, when we send you
Okay.
the information for the
Great.
webinar, we'll add the link for registration. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Mhm.
Thank you again, Janet and Carmina. And now I'm excited to also pass it over to Aaliyah Van Dyke from Wheatland Union High School. Aaliyah.
Right. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me on this webinar. I love talking about our program and love talking about this topic and how we can better advocate for our kiddos who typically need it the most. So my name is Aaliyah Van Dyke. I am the Director of Community Schools and Mental Health at Wheatland High School District. I'm also the Foster and Homeless Liaison. If you're like, that's a lot of titles for one person, it's because I work in a small district. In small districts, we are often wearing multiple hats, which can have benefits and also some challenges. We'll kind of talk about what that looks like in practice. But I'm going to talk to you today about our Safe Harbor program, which has really been at the heart of our community schools initiative since we got our community schools grant 4 years ago. And it's our program for our At Promise youth here at our school. So next slide, please. So some folks are familiar with where Wheatland is. Usually it's because they've gone to a concert here or they've gone to Bishop's Pumpkin Farm, which is essentially the Disneyland of pumpkin farms in Northern California. But we are a tiny rural county, a little bit north of Sacramento, just about 45 minutes north of Sacramento. You can kind of see that little red sliver on the map there. We are just isolated enough that things are a little bit harder out here in terms of access to services. Typically, most of our families are having to travel a significant distance in order to get to their doctor's offices, to get to work, to get to social services. We don't have public transportation readily available. And our school district is quite large. We're unique in that we are essentially a single site LEA. So we have one school district. There's technically 3 schools located on our campus, but it's our comprehensive high school, our community day school, and a continuation school. And we serve 45 square miles, all the way from Beale Air Force Base, includes the town of Wheatland, Plumas Lake, which is one of the fastest growing communities in California right now. We've had a lot of new families moving in from the Bay Area, from Sacramento. And then we also have pull for some really rural areas in northern Yuba County, which includes Smartsville and some of the other neighboring small towns up there. So quite a diverse student body. We have some a lot of changes in our population in the last few years. We've gone from about a population of around 650 students in 2018 to now we're closer to almost 1,200 students. So pretty significant growth on our campus. And we've also seen the needs of our students change. We have gone from about a unduplicated count of about 40% to closer to 80% now. So our student needs are changing, and we've had to really adapt our programs on our campus to be able to better support our students and our families. Next slide, please. So we implemented our Safe Harbor program. We're really around, I would say, year 5 of this program, and it's evolved every year. And it kind of came about with this idea that when I got hired at Wheatland, they said, "You're our first school social worker that we've had, and you're going to be the foster and homeless liaison." And I think every school social worker goes like, "Yes, this is what I went to grad school for. I'm so excited." And so I thought, I'm going to meet with all of my students and families every single month. I'm going to be providing really intensive services to make sure that our families are supported in the way that they deserve, in the way that's aligned with the McKinney-Vento Act. And I quickly realized this is a lot. There's no way one person can do this. And so I had to get really intentional with figuring out, how do we craft a program that is going to be meeting the needs of all of our kids, but making sure we're directing resources to the ones who are needing it the most, and providing kind of some less intensive services to the ones who don't need it, because we know even within McKinney-Vento students, their needs can vary pretty dramatically. So that's really how that Safe Harbor program started. We also found that a lot of our kids who qualified for McKinney-Vento had really similar needs and experiences as our foster youth. And then so we said, okay, let's start making sure we're including them in the conversation. And then we started looking at our data, and we went, well, our former foster youth are also having really similar needs. So we're like, okay, we really need to include them too. And then when we dove into ed code and foster youth code, we were like, they actually deserve to be supported in the same way. They have these same rights all the way through high school. So we included them. And then we were looking at our students who qualify as newcomers, and our migrant students. And we don't have a high percentage of students who qualify as migrant or newcomers, but we noticed that many of them were doubled up and were also qualifying for McKinney-Vento. So we said, all right, we're going to try to craft a program that can support all of these students. And we're going to make this a centerpiece of our community schools initiative and our grant. So that's where this came from. It's our wraparound support program for our At Promise youth. We are really leveraging MTSS multi-tiered system of support to support more students in the family. So again, making sure that our students that have tier 3 needs are receiving tier 3 services, and our students who are in the program who might be a little bit, have additional stability, or their families have outside resources, we can do a little bit less and really base it on what the family need is. We have dedicated staff to support our Safe Harbor students, really making sure that this is an intentional part of our daily conversation of saying, how are we going to ensure our kids have what they need to be successful in high school? And it's really become this integral part of our culture. So every conversation that we have with our leadership team, with our superintendent, our principal, there's usually me in the corner saying, what about our Safe Harbor kids? How are we going to ensure that they have equitable access to these programs? Even in making sure their voices are often centered in some of our bigger decisions. So for example, this past year, one of our Safe Harbor students is actually our student board representative. So her voice is really centered in a lot of the conversations we have at these higher levels of our small district. And really our goal has been to reduce whatever barriers we can identify to make sure our kids can succeed. And we have really found out that by providing that more rich experience or support, our kids have really succeeded. They really just need those barriers addressed. So next slide, please. So this is a little bit of our data that we pulled from. We're really excited to kind of see how this has made an impact on some of our kids. Right off the bat, we found that our graduation rates improved pretty dramatically. So this is compared to 2021-22 to this past year. really every year since we've implemented this program, we've had 100% of our kids graduate. And it's really because it seems like we have a team of people who are just never giving up on them. And this often requires a lot of really intensive outreach from some of our community school staff who are, contacting students weekly to figure out, hey, where are you located? We had one kiddo last year who was living in her car, and we sent a weekly text message. We stopped actually having contact with her for a few months. We're like, we're just going to keep trying. We're going to keep trying. And she ended up resurfacing, and as soon as she was able to resurface, we were able to reconnect her back into services and kind of help her get caught up through our continuation program and helped her graduate. So it really allows us to have those really deep connections with our kids and be pretty persistent in helping them succeed. We also saw that average credits earned really increased, average GPA improved, and then we saw kind of these school connection metrics improve as well. So tardies were reduced and missed periods were reduced. We actually, I will say this, we have not seen a huge shift in daily attendance rates, and we're not sure if that's just because some of our kids have really chronic challenges that make it hard for them to get to school. And so we're seeing these metrics improve on these matters. We're still trying to work out to be able to see how that ADA rate can improve for them. But that's going to kind of be our ongoing goal for maybe the future years of this program. Next slide, please. So what does this look like in practice? The first piece, we really start with connection. We know our kids who are at Promise have often had a pretty challenging connection with school. Many of them have been to multiple schools. Many of them have faced even school discipline or having truancy letters come to their house. And so we really made sure that the first place that we're working with our kids is from this place of relationship building. We leverage small groups to build that student connection. We find that equally as important with staff connections is their peer connections. And with our Safe Harbor program, it's been really liberating for some of our kids to come into a small group. And even though they don't know how everyone qualifies for the group, they do know that other kids have experienced some major life stressors, and they're able to build connections with kids who they feel like understand their life experience. Because many of them feel really, really isolated with dealing with homelessness or dealing with foster care. And it's not something that just readily comes up. We do these monthly breakfasts where we're just trying to start their day off with like a hearty meal. We're providing them with additional information so that they know kind of what's going on campus. They can make sure they're getting these priority referrals to different events on campus. We typically include a life skill element of the breakfast. So for our upperclassmen, we held a breakfast for them this week, and we focused on what is credit. They told us that they're like, we want to know what credit is. We don't understand what this is. We need this for being adults. So we survey them each month to go, where is it that you're wanting to learn about? How can we bring this information to you? Because they're not always getting that at home. And so we found that has been very helpful in order to build that engagement. Small things really make a big difference. Just giving our kids a birthday card with their teacher signing it and having a staff member that says, like, I'm going to take this extremely cheap birthday card, but I'm going to make sure every staff is signing it, can make a huge difference to our kids feeling like they're wanted on campus. As I said, attendance, support, and engagement, just following up with our kids, noticing when they've dropped off and really trying to re-engage them in a way that is non-judgmental, that's understanding that life circumstances come up and it can be really hard to sometimes get to school. And how can we be sure that as soon as they come back to campus, we have a plan to re-engage them, a plan to help make sure that they're catching up on their assignments and that they're really welcomed. And then really having this point person as a primary advocate, we find that has been incredibly helpful, especially as we identify additional students. There's often a lot of hands in the pot, especially when people are really trying to be supportive, but it can get really confusing to our kids if they don't know who to go to. And so we've really tried to make sure that we're identifying who is that support person who's going to help our kids navigate some of these complexities. Next slide, please. I really have wanted to include this slide as well as kind of our overarching community schools initiative, in that this is a tier 1 universal initiative. It's not just available to our At Promise youth, but it's been so crucial to our kids who have these more challenging relationships with traditional school. And so and has been kind of this cornerstone of community schools and conversations around community schools on our campus. And so making sure we have really strong engagement opportunities for our kids has been really important. So this training of teachers on best practices, training our teachers on what McKinney-Vento is. I like to say that we deputize our teachers in kind of helping us identify who our McKinney-Vento and our At Promise youth are. Making sure they have an understanding of trauma-informed interventions and really this universal design for learning. We need our kids to be able to access their instruction in different ways and show mastery of content in different ways. And that's been really crucial for helping to kind of engage some of our students who struggle in a comprehensive classroom. Building our staff buy-in with strengths-based language. So using this term safe harbor instead of saying our foster and homeless youth has been really key. It's given our kids anonymity, so that way when we're advocating to our staff members, their information is protected, and has allowed us to really shift this kind of tenor on how we're looking at our At Promise youth. In fact, we've even found that some students students don't know what Safe Harbor means, and they start to hear about this program. And so sometimes they'll ask us, like, how do I join Safe Harbor? Which makes us feel like we were really doing something right when we have other kids asking how they get into this program, because it's really showing that this is just a normal part of culture, and it's really taking away some of the stigma of it. Thinking beyond our traditional classes, so our CTE pathways, we've really expanded those out. I believe we have 19 pathways as of this year. We have project-based learning, work-based learning. We have alternative pathways to graduation. So I mentioned that we have a continuation school and a community school on campus, really working within those programs to make sure that our kids have these different ways to show success, because sometimes their pathway to graduation might look or might be really personalized to them. Next slide, please. And then part of our program has really been like, how are we just identifying what the barriers to education are, and how are we addressing them in our community school strategy and in our Safe Harbor program? So ensuring students have access to mental health services on campus. Again, this is not just a Safe Harbor initiative, but this has been this whole school-wide initiative that we've had on our campus. Making sure that we're not just offering Tier 3 services, but also this Tier 1 and Tier 2. Having safe places on campus for our students to go, especially being able to sometimes access outside providers. That has been really key. Making sure we have a plan for data collection and data tracking to really prevent things from deteriorating further. We know sometimes our kids, things will happen in their lives and things will drop off, and we can see it when we look at their grades or we look at their attendance. But if you catch it really late, it can be harder to re-engage them. And so having that plan in place has been really key. And then just really looking at these ways that we are ensuring that they have equitable supports. So giving them free access to extracurricular activities, which is part of McKinney-Vento, but really saying what is the spirit of that, and how are we making sure that they have access to things like school dances, like the like prom, like the sober grad night, and making sure that we have plans in place to ensure that they can get those activities for free. We have food and clothing pantries on campus. We have a washer and dryer. We have some kids' clothes who we will pick up, and then we will wash and dry it for them, and we'll send them home, because it's often a barrier for them to come to school if they don't have access to that. And then really providing this warm handoff to on and off campus support programs. Next slide, please. So this was just kind of a snapshot. We have other elements in here. And sometimes I talk about my program for like 90 minutes. I'm really giving you the high level overview. But if I was to kind of give you like what were some of our key best practices walking away with this, if you were going to try to implement something in your own district, these are some of the things that we found was really actively identifying students who may qualify. Getting them into this program early on really helped them to be successful. And we really needed a plan to kind of actively identify our students who would qualify, especially our former foster youth. We found that these students were often most at risk, especially if they were sometimes reunified with their family. they went from having a situation where they had a ton of supports, and then sometimes those supports drop off, and sometimes families are not able to maintain the stability. And so we do see them sometimes, and they're falling back into these categories where they're qualifying as McKinney-Vento. And so if we could have this ongoing support for them, it really, really helps create some more stability. Branding this group with a strengths-based name. This was so huge. Having the students tell you what they want that name to be. We really wanted to involve that student voice wherever we could in our program development. Focusing on this connection before academics. I think this is a common one. We know in education now that relationship is really what allows academics to even take root. But this has just been a key thing that we've kept in mind whenever we're talking about our program or doing staff training. Really building staff buy-in. We know sometimes we operate in silos, especially as non-teaching staff. And so really, like, how are we involving teachers in the process? How are we making sure that we're communicating with them about student needs, because they are also really good champions for their kids too. Using data to inform decisions whenever possible, and having that plan of how you're pulling data. For us, we actually created a safe harbor code in Aries. So we were able to more easily run data queries on a regular basis and just quickly review things. And it made such a difference because you just can't track all of this individually. Making transportation a priority, and really this was an all hands on deck situation. I don't have enough time to really go into what this looks like in practice, but for our district, one of the things that really helped was we created a board policy where we allow staff members to use their personal vehicle to transport in specific cases. That has been instrumental to ensuring we can maintain school of origin, because sometimes our kids are moving for a couple weeks and we don't have a van route that can go out that way. But if we can identify a staff member that's coming down that way and have them use their personal vehicle, it can really help it while we're trying to stabilize a family. Having multiple methods of family engagement, making sure you have a way to text your families. A lot of our families don't respond to phone calls. I struggle to respond to phone calls, so I understand that. Just making sure you're meeting your families where they're at. And then, as I said before, centering student voice in all decisions. Next slide, please. And this is just, we like to center really the why we're doing this program. Our students give us a lot of feedback about what they like, what they don't like. We're regularly making adjustments to the program. Every year we kind of make a different adjustment and having some kind of program flexibility. But our students have really said that this is important to them, that this has been the difference between them graduating, them not graduating, from them feeling safe. And so I think hearing this feedback has been something that has not only caused us to know like we need to continue with this, but also has been really helpful to share with our board so that they know that like this is why we're continuing to make sure that our at Promise youth are at the center of a lot of our educational decisions. And this, I just want to draw attention, this drawing actually was one of our students who helped us come up with the name Safe Harbor. He was a student who were qualified as McKinney-Vento, and for him, he just kept saying, like, I just picture this safe harbor as an anchor that protects me in the storm. And so that was what he drew. We've been using that as our logo ever since. Next slide, please. All right, so the big question that everyone always has, like, how do we pay for this? What does this look like? Next question. Next slide. Really, it's been a matter of braiding and blending our funds, really having these long-term kind of outlooks of what we want our program to look like. Title I funds has been a big one for us, depending on kind of the year and where we're landing, and supplemental and concentration funds have been helpful. We do a lot of grant work. I'm often kind of thinking in these 5-year increments of like, okay, I know community schools is going to be phasing out at this point. What is going to be similar to that I can kind of add on for the next few years, and being intentional with that. Sometimes that means not following up with money that's not going to be aligned to your program, which is a very difficult conversation to have with your higher ups. But really having that focus and vision of what this program needs to be and making sure you're intentionally seeking grants that align with that. We use our child nutrition program funds for a lot of our breakfasts. We get huge support from our county office of education. They've been lovely. We love calling them up and saying like, hey, we have this idea for this thing and trying to figure out how can we help pay for it. And then sponsors and community donations, again, with that, using that term safe harbor has given us anonymity, which allows us to then put a lot of community support out there and request donations, request help. And our community has often shown up and they love being a part of that. Using our Medi-Cal funds when possible. A lot of our students who are in Safe Harbor have mental health needs. I'd say probably 95% of them. And so using these LEA bot funds and our SMAW funds where possible has been something we've been able to do. And then looking forward, CYBHI is what kind of we're seeing in the near future, trying to see how we can qualify some of our staff as certified wellness coaches because they are doing a lot of this case management, a lot of like health and wellness coaching for our kids, and just seeing if we can recoup some billing in that way. And then finally, I brought it on here, prioritizing the completion of our free and reduced lunch program has been pivotal, especially in our area. We have a much higher count for students who qualify for free and reduced lunch than some of our neighboring districts. We don't think we actually have our population is any higher because we just have the older siblings, but we are really, really intentional with reaching out to our families. And that's been the difference of really millions of dollars for our district. We have some of our staff, I volunteer or I voluntold our staff to help out with this. And that allows our superintendent is like, let's make sure we're funding your program. So we have those kind of conversations ongoing. Next slide. All right, here I made it to the Q&A. I'm a little over, but I was trying to talk as fast as I could.
Boy, do you have questions, Aaliyah? Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and read some of these off for you. So, what came first, Safe Harbor or the community schools?
So our Safe Harbor was technically first. So we received an implementation grant for community schools, and we included that Safe Harbor program as part of it. But it was really only a year before, and so they've almost kind of grown up together. And there's very little differentiation between the two programs in terms of staffing at this point.
Great. Thank you. And how many students in the graduating class, and how many were identified as McKinney-Vento?
I don't know who's in I have to go look and filter out by 12th graders. Right now, currently we have 73 students who are qualifying in the program. And McKinney-Vento, we have 36. So we're probably a little bit lower than some of our, some other districts, but we also tend to include students who have recently found housing, but we give them the option to stay in our Safe Harbor program because we often know that their housing is still fairly precarious. And so it's helpful for them to stay in it for longer.
Right. Thank you. And what are the criteria for at-promise youth? Is it anyone who needs it?
Yeah, so I would love to be able to do it for everyone who needs it. I think that's where I would love to. I said the conversations we're trying to have with our higher ups to make sure we're qualifying as many students as possible. We have had to be pretty intentional though with who we're qualifying just because of staffing and resources. So students that qualify would be our McKinney-Vento youth, our foster, former foster, our migrant and newcomers, and then we also include our probation involved youth. We just don't have very many that qualify under migrant or probation involved.
Great. Thank you. And you stated you're located in a small community. My question is, how many students are on your campus?
So on our campus, we have about 1150 total enrollment, but on our campus on every given day, there's about 950. We just have some students that are in our virtual program as well. Great.
Staff buy-in seems to be a challenge for many of us. How did you overcome this, or is this still a challenge for you?
It can be a challenge sometimes, and then number one, it's been really helpful. Our board is very supportive. I make sure that I'm collecting data that I can present to our board. A few years ago, we had the Homeless Innovation Project grant, and I made sure that we took our board president to NACCE, and that like really clicked for him. He's like, this is why we need to be doing this work. I took our superintendent to NACCE with us. I think that it's really about building relationships with my teaching staff, with our union. I do think it is a little bit easier in a small community because we just know each other in ways that at larger districts, that might be a bit more of a challenge. But having that leadership buy-in has been really key. And then also making sure you have buy-in with other staff members who are going to have a lot of contact with your at Promise youth. So connecting with like our cafeteria head, with our transportation department, and really just being intentional with building these deep relationships with them. So there's a lot of trust there.
Great. Thank you. And I think you answered this one. This question might have come before, but can you share how you were securing financially mental health professionals on campus? So is that the LEA BOP, the ESMA, and potentially CYBHI?
Yeah, so it's a combination of grant funding. We have at least, I think we have 15 grants running right now. So it's a lot, and they're not all in mental health, they're different ones. But that has been a key one where we're just making sure we're writing in those positions. And we've kind of had staffing changes over the years, depending on where we are with grant funding. So now we're down to 2 full-time therapists, and then we've been supplementing with partnerships with our universities to get graduate students as well to provide some of those provide services too. We are also, I think, we had these ongoing conversations with our superintendent about we need to make sure we're having these positions funded long term, especially given kind of our location, and we're fairly remote from services, and so we're pretty confident that that will continue to be written in our school budget going forward, even if grant funding runs out.
Great, thank you. Does a staff member need special permission to be able to drive the kids to an event or whichever the case may be, or is it approved by your school district?
So we would need to make sure that we're going through proper channels, that we weren't just having staff members just driving kids. We would go through this board policy. They would get cleared by our transportation department, making sure they have a certain number of amount of insurance. And then we would be going on a case-by-case basis with our admin team to determine when they would be getting transported.
Great. I heard you mention as well, what is the kind of support you've received from your County Office of Education? You mentioned if you have an idea or a plan, you've connected with your County Office of Education, which is Yuba County. Is there anything else specific you wanted to add to that?
I mean, we tap them for resources for our McKinney-Vento youth. We've had them come on our campus some years to provide mental health services when we were having a gap there. We have some MOUs in place to staff our kids that have really, really complex needs. So that way we're making sure we're getting these like multidisciplinary teams in place. Mm-hmm. I said they've been very, very supportive whenever we need help.
Great. All right. And let's see. How are you? Let's see. I think we already answered the agreement with staff providing safe ride to school. Did students collaborate and or take the lead on the design of your homeless innovation program toolkit? What is the process for student integration?
You know, that would have been a great idea. We did not have students collaborate on like the creation of our toolkit. However, the ideas that are pulled into there are based on student involvement. And so we are every breakfast that we have, we are surveying our students and trying to get feedback from them about what are they wanting to see in the program, what changes do they need, and kind of making sure we're making some adjustments to our program each year. We don't want to make so many adjustments each year that like the program is just constantly shifting, but being intentional with like some key elements that we might change from year over year in ways that are working better for our current cohort of students.
Okay, great, thank you. And I think this is the last one. Can you share some examples of field trips your students have taken and what funding sources you have used to support them?
Yeah, so one of the ones they love the most, they love bowling. We had a lot of students that had never been bowling before. We took them to the Museum of Science and Curiosity in Sacramento, which we were thinking it might be a little bit too juvenile for them, and it was not. They loved it. We have gone to our pumpkin farms. We usually try to do a couple of field trips each year. We fund it through, last year we funded it through our we did community engagement initiative funds. So we had some unrestricted funds from there that had our community school staff participating in, and that we were able to pull the funds. And then we've been using some additional grants. We've been writing things in to make sure that we have those field trips covered each year.
Great. Aaliyah, thank you so much for sharing your phenomenal work with your Safe Harbor program. And now we are going to go ahead. Next slide, please. We're going to jump on into our breakout rooms for, let's say, 20 minutes. So we'll have just a conversation, right? What are some of the current supports you all are implementing for foster youth and in-house students? How are you integrating those supports with community schools? Maybe some conversation around data and outcomes. What indicators or data points are you using to track, measure the impact of support you're providing? And potentially another question that you could be discussing or answering around is what strategies have been most effective for braiding or aligning multiple funding sources, as you've heard from our presenters. So we're going to go ahead and break out. You have the option to choose which breakout you want to join. And a few of us will just be in there, just kind of providing resource support, listening, and also just being there to support each of you in your breakout rooms. So Nan, I believe, is going to go ahead and launch the breakout rooms, and you can go ahead and select one. Everyone, apologies if you were talking and were cut off. I know in my group, Ben, apologies. I know you much everyone for engaging in the breakouts. I also just want to, our breakouts were amazing. Thank you. And I also want to reiterate and express our deepest gratitude to Janet, Carmina, and Aaliyah for partnering today and just reiterating that, Ben was just sharing in our breakout the beauty of community schools and how he's feeling like we're de-siloing and that we're working together. And that's exactly what these webinars are about. We have also identified as statewide leads that we need to connect with partner agencies like the CDE, with leaders across CDE to really think about how are we doing this as statewide TA providers and modeling what it looks like to work together, right? And also, if we expect that at our school sites and our districts and our county offices of education, we need to be pulling together, creating spaces like these. And it's so heartening to hear that coherence is happening. We are de-siloing, we are building bridges, and it's so exciting. So once again, thank you, presenters. Deeply appreciate your partnership. And also, next slide, Nan. Also want to thank you all for joining us in this, asking the great questions, sharing the great resources, and just filling our cups. So please go ahead and complete this feedback form that's here. Nan will also be sending out from our S-TAC email. I follow up with the recording to this webinar as well as the slide deck or PowerPoints that will include the links that you can access and the Title I flyer that Janet and Carmina referenced for you all to register for that if you're interested. And our next webinar is going to be on February 3rd from 3 to 4:30. So please feel free to share that across your counties, districts, and school sites. And we look forward to seeing you all. We won't be seeing you till February, so we hope you have a wonderful holiday season with your loved ones and be safe. So thanks again, and please complete the feedback. It really informs our work moving forward. Take care, everyone.